So I'm here with Greg Browder, from the World Bank, speaking about the SOBA launch that just took place outside here in Yangon. Greg, your reflections, your thoughts, I'd love to hear them.
Okay. SOBA stands for State of the Basin Assessment Report, and it's a baseline study of water resources in the Irrawaddy River Basin. Not only water, but other resources such as aquatic ecosystem, socioeconomic resources, sediments, water pollution, groundwater, all the elements that are important for the basin. And it's a very important milestone in the history of water resources management for Myanmar, because it's important to recall that Myanmar was isolated for many decades and just recently emerged from this period of isolation. And in the early 2010s, the Myanmar government specifically requested the World Bank to prioritize water resources management in the Irrawaddy Basin, because they recognize the importance of water for Myanmar, not only for agricultural production. Myanmar is a great food producing nation, for hydropower, for water supply for people, and it was a priority for the Myanmar government, but they really had very little information because of the period of isolation and basically starting from ground zero. And so the World Bank provided a loan to the Myanmar government for the Irrawaddy Integrated River Basin Management Project. And one of the components of this project is water resources management, including developing a basin plan for the Irrawaddy River Basin. So, of course, the first step that we discussed with the government around 2015 was to conduct a baseline study to see what information existed, how to collect it and analyze it and present it as the first step in a basin planning process. So this was complicated by the fact that the institutions in Myanmar are still very weak and developing quickly, but starting from a very low base. And so in 2016, when the process got started, the basic strategy was to try to reach out to the different NGOs who are already working on different parts of Irrawaddy Basin Management. For example, the International Water Resources Management Institute, IMI, was working on groundwater in the basin. There was another group, the WWF, World Wildlife Foundation, World Wildlife Fund, working on sediment and morphology in the river. World Fish was also doing studies related to fisheries. So we got all of the NGOs who were working in Myanmar, and some of the consulting companies were quite active, and the project that was financed through the World Bank but implemented by the National Water Resources Committee and its Hydroinformatics Center, they contracted these NGOs and consulting companies to help provide the inputs to SOBA. But still, because the Hydroinformatics Center was still getting started, just established, they reached out to the Australian government to ask for some special assistance to help coordinate all of these activities. So the Australian Water Partnership was very generous, and the first thing they did was provide a SOBA coordinator to help the Hydroinformatics Center pull together all these studies, to oversee the consultants and the NGOs and integrate their work into a final product. AWP also, with its expertise in hydrology and modeling, also provided support to do a surface water assessment for the basin, which is really the foundation, the hydrological foundation for the SOBA report. So put all these pieces together, including AWP support, and they were able to pull together a very solid first ever compendium of basin resources and their current status. And this will feed into the next step, which is development of a Irrawaddy River Basin plan to help guide investments into the future. And this basin plan will take probably 2 to 3 years to complete, but they already have a head start thanks to the SOBA report. So it's a long story, and I hope I explained the basic elements well enough.
Yeah. Great. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Oh, so many other questions. I think when you develop a basin plan, like what you've described, you're starting at a foundation where you don't have a lot. You start to understand the resource, but then from there, I mean, planning has to do a lot with projecting forward, saying, this is one possible scenario, this could really work, or this scenario could have unintended consequences. And to say that you're putting together a plan like that, and I'm hoping it's going to be a living document, but for the most part doing that even within 2 years, if you're trying to scope out over the next 50 years, it's quite an extensive process to undertake. Particularly, as you said, that just a few years ago, the baseline of understanding and resources and technologies being applied was rather minimal because of the isolation.
Right.
How is it going to happen? I mean, it's such an interesting, it's a very ambitious process to take on. Because it's not just a process of making a plan, but you're also educating people along the way. And then doing these scenario projections, I would figure is how probably it will be done, and then trying to move backwards and figure out, well, how do we actually get to that? But you're deciding about the future of a country. It has huge implications.
Well, 2 responses. One is basin planning is a process. So we fully expect that after this first basin plan is completed, it will need to be updated in probably 5 years, and after a brief pause, time to get started with the next phase of planning. So it's a continuous process. Every country has to do it, and it never ends. So the important thing to recognize, I think, is that investments in water and related resources are already going on in Myanmar. They will continue to accelerate with or without a structured basin planning process because the development imperative is so strong. And so...
And also the foreign entities who are here are so involved, so there's a lot of dynamics taking place here.
So the investments will take place, and so my perspective is we shouldn't let the best be the enemy of the good. It's better to get started, even though the first basin plan in almost every circumstance will have some considerable deficiencies, but it's better to get started quickly and produce something of value rather than waiting for a perfect product. Exactly, and recognizing it's a continual process that can be adjusted, upgraded over time, over decades actually, constantly evolving. So that's, I think, the strategy that the National Water Resources Committee and its Hydroinformatics Center is pursuing. And
the basin plan has the potential to set a long-term vision for the development of the country.
For the Irrawaddy Basin, which is a big chunk of,
it's not the whole country, but it's significant in this bulk of the population as well. So
very complex process, and luckily they have some support through the financing provided by the World Bank, and also the expertise that other development partners provide, like the Australian Water Partnership.
So more to come.
Yes, more to come.
Stay tuned.
You can interview probably my predecessor in 3 to 4 years and talk about the how the basin plan turned out.
Yeah, I look forward to hearing
Okay.
that story in
Yeah.
the future. Great, well,
All
thank
right.
you so much.
Thank you.